We are live.
Thank you. This is Senate Appropriation. Taking a deep breath, prepared for H66 out of the opioid containment bill. We have joint fiscal staff here to run us through the fiscal note of this bill.
Great. For the record, Nolan Engel, the Joint Fiscal Office. I'll start with the fiscal note, and then I'll move over to a balance sheet if you want to get into the weeds. Let me pull up this note here real quick.
Oh,
There's
there she is.
All right. So, the bill would appropriate $8.1 million, and refer to $1.4 million to and from the opioid abatement special fund in fiscal year 27. It would also appropriate $640,000 from the substance misuse prevention fund. I won't walk you through all of the different things that the bill's going to do. I'll leave that to Katie in terms of studies and looking at this and looking at that. I'm just going to focus on two things today, and then answer questions. One is the appropriations, because really this is very much an appropriation bill. Now, as you recall, what the Senate did was, you put the money in the budget, and then, oh no, I'm thinking, I was conflating it for a second with the housing bill. Sorry, no. So this is an appropriation bill, and it's mostly from the opioid fund, but there's also some spending of this substance misuse fund as well. So
it's like an annual bill.
yeah. So what happens is that there's a committee that meets, and you have opioid abatement special fund advisory committee. They meet. And they put forth a recommendation, and then the health department puts forth a recommendation. And what the Human Services Committee was the first group to have it, compared the two recommendations and decided what they wanted to do. Instead of doing this, well, no, let's stick with this now. And so what this is the culmination. So the House put forth their recommendation of how to spend the money, and the Senate made some tweaks to it and how they want to spend the money. The biggest piece being shifting money out of the opioid abatement fund into the substance misuse fund. Now, there was a lot of confusion because the House actually wanted to do that as well. There's 4 appropriations, and those are these 4 down here: Elevate, Greater Falls Connection, Interaction, Friends, and Winooski. And initially, the House wanted to use the substance misuse fund for that as well. But at the time, it was determined that there wasn't enough money in the substance misuse fund, so it was put into the opioid abatement fund. We later learned that actually, after all, there is money that's available in the substance misuse fund, so this money was appropriated back. So it's become sort of more than just the opioid bill. And the reason that it was done that way was because there was a sense that those 4 things were better used for substance misuse than they were specific to opioids. As you recall, the substance misuse fund is paid for by cannabis tax dollars.
And so there's no general fund.
No general fund in this bill. But there is spending in the budget that's passed from here that is the opioid abatement fund.
Right.
And that was a shift of one of the particular initiatives, hireability. It was proposed to be spent out of budget, and folks felt that it was better to do one time out of the opioid abatement fund to create room in the budget for other things with intent language for it to become based in the following year. So I won't walk through what each of these particular things are, other than the fact that this is an outline of what the spending is, and this matches the section numbers will match what you see in the bill with Katie. The other piece is that every year, as you know, this is an annual bill, and it's based on how much money is in the fund, how much money can we spend, how much money is going into the fund. The settlement fund is going to be a diminishing fund over time. So what you have here on this sheet, right on this page, is sort of what the allocations are, the estimated allocations to the fund annually are. So it's estimated in 25, there's going to be another allocation of 4.58 million, 26, another allocation of 4.5 million, et cetera, and you can see starting around 2033, that amount will start to decrease, and then by 2038, it's expected that the fund will be completely depleted. That said, this is all the current settlements that we have. There is one more outstanding settlement from the Purdue Pharma. It's estimated that could be as much as $20 million additional. We don't know when that will come in. I'm not actually sure the exact amount. And when it does come in, does it come in lump sums or over time as well? We do not know. So at the time, all the committees of jurisdiction have looked at this and sort of tried to live within the existing knowing what's in the fund now. So this is what the fund will, this is what, how much money is going to be going into the fund. So you'll see this year we're spending 8 million, but hey, we'll have 4.58 million in the future years. I have another sheet if you're interested. I can walk you through it or I cannot walk you through it depending on how much interest you have in it. It is posted on the website, but it looks at all the different recommendations, what has been spent in the previous years from the fund, and how much is on the bottom line after this.
And so the annual, you just said this, but just for make sure I understand right, it's an annual allotment because that was just how the settlement was. We'll pay you so much per year as a declining amount.
Correct. And then we have one more settlement that hasn't come in yet.
So these numbers will change.
Numbers will go up. We just don't know when it will come in,
Okay.
the specific amount, and how much will we get? Will it be over 5 years? Will it be in a lump sum? We don't know. So this is the bill before you and then, like I said, if anyone is interested, I can, Senator Lyons has it out in front of her. It's sort of a layout of the history of the spending of the existing appropriations over time. Or you can come back to people have questions when Katie gets up. If you say, oh, well, how much was spent in the past? And they can pull up the other sheet, but it is on the website.
Do they make any difference between base and one time?
It's all one time out of this fund.
So example, like the Elevate Youth Surf Center, if they were to create that, there's no guarantee that money would be there in the next.
Correct. It's actually a great segue because the higher ability, which was in the budget this year, the idea behind it is everything out of these funds are considered one time. And if a program is considered successful, then it's like the idea would be, oh, it's a successful program, let's move it into the base. And that's what higher ability was. It's folks saying, hey, this is a successful program, let's move it into base, into the budget.
But the House did.
And the House did that. And as part of the construct of trying to pay for the primary care, there was a decision made that one time put the $875,000 back into the opioid fund this year with intent to put it in base next year to try to help fund. It was part of the construct.
Okay.
But everything in these funds are considered one time. And in the future, if they want to become base, we would actually move it into your budget.
Right. Okay. And do you just say about the reversions?
Oh, yeah. The reversions were based on recommendations from the health department about money that they did not need. It was either unspent or it was more money than was contracted. And so they came to the House Human Services Committee at the time and said, we don't need this money, we need to revert it. And all the committees concurred. So that money is just being reverted back into the fund. So it's 8.1 million plus less than 1.4 reversion. The net impact is $6.7 million.
And the overdose prevention center, is that money been sitting here for a while? Did we put money for that?
We've put this point we put $2.2 million into that.
Is there another 1.1 million or that which is reoccurring?
No, it's not recurring. It's just there's been 2 appropriations, and I just realized that my sheet does not reflect it.
So that they have 2.2 to work with.
They have 2.2 to work with. My understanding is they spent about 700,
400,000.
400.
Just like
Just part of the planning and paying for staff and site visits, and
Right.
they're still trying to find a location.
Okay. Any questions about these appropriations of the fund, North Center and North?
Yeah, I don't know whether to ask them or Katie when she gets up here. Senator Lyons have had, and I have had several conversations with reference to the storage program. Is this the needle exchange program that we're talking about, the $850,000?
There is needle exchange in here. Is it? I think
Yes, it's 850.
$850. So
Yeah.
that is an area of concern for me. I don't think that the program as you're working as we intended it to Because I can tell you firsthand that these syringes are all over the grounds, no matter which community that you go into. I think the key word is supposed to be needle exchange program. If that is not happening, it's an elements that we walk the grounds from football fields prior to the game start to pick up syringes. I've had them out on my lawn in the front of my house before. I'm a little concerned as to how long we've been doing this, how much have we jumped into this, because the program in its totality doesn't work in the way that we thought it was going to work when it first came about. Because we're now endangering. I can't even imagine during Green Bay this past Saturday how many needles or syringes they found along the highway and byways throughout the market. I don't think that was the intent of this program when we started. But you have considering as to which direction we're going to go with this and when we're going to reach its full capability if ever we do. Because I think it's dangerous. They're not exchanging needles, they're tossing them in the parks that our children and grandchildren play, more importantly, along the roadsides. So, why are we continuing to struggle if obviously it's endangering children?
Is it just a syringe services? Is it an exchange or is it a wages for those users to get clean syringes?
The answer is yes, both of those things. The syringes are available for folks who need clean syringes for injection. There's no requirement that they bring a syringe in and exchange it. But for example, the Howard Center has hired someone to go out and help clean up syringes in the city of Burlington. But beyond that, there's no obligation or control over how those syringes are disposed of. And you look at the notes, I'm looking at the notes that have come along with Nolan's spreadsheet. And there's a lot of money that has yet to be handed out for the syringe program as it is. 1.2 million hasn't been obligated yet.
I don't have that in front of me.
For prior.
I'm looking at your OSAC.
Okay. I don't have, what's been obligated and allocated.
So
Just have what's
neither
appropriated.
OSAC nor BDH recommended funding syringe services in 27. House Human Services heard that money previously appropriated had not yet been released. So it's less, I guess the 850,000 is less. And I will look behind you at either Department of Health or Gail Zatz to weigh in on that. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Gail Zatz on behalf of the AIDS service organizations. First, to address the issue of the needles, one of the other things that the programs do, well, let me go back. The programs do exchange needles, but they also provide resources for counseling, for medical care, et cetera, when people come in. And they do take needles if people do bring in needles, but if they don't, they also provide education to the individuals as to how to dispose safely of needles.
So they
while they
provide
don't-
clean new needles?
Yes, and while they are not following the people after they leave to find out if they do dispose of the needles appropriately, they do provide education as to how to dispose of those needles safely. In terms of the funding, so $850,000 was appropriated last fiscal year. That money has not yet gone out the door, but it is in progress, and the support could speak more to that as well. The programs do need the full FY26 funding, and they also anticipate needing the full FY27 funding.
I'm just,
Yeah, no,
in
either.
my opinion, it's
Yeah.
it's a
Frustrating.
failed program as far as the exchange is concerned, and we're jeopardizing our young children out here by funding it as much as we do. And it's nice that the Howard Center is picking up in Burlington, but they don't come out to Sheldon, they don't come out to St. Albans. And we got a serious problem here. We just continue to fund these needles, these syringes. And I don't know how we address this.
And I assume that the reason you give out needles, even though they're not exchanged, is because you're trying to prevent the spread of illness, so you want people to use clean.
HIV for 30
Yeah,
years.
yes, and also to reduce deaths. I don't know if any of you caught the, you can quote me the interview with the Commissioner of Health. But apparently there's a 25% decrease in overdose deaths in Vermont. And we like to think and we hope that it is in part of the good work that the SSPs are doing throughout the state.
Okay. Okay, well, any other questions? Mr. Okay, thank you. Councilor McLean. I don't know if there's anything else we need to know about the bill. We talked about the appropriations prior to. Assume that's all we need to know.
Well, there's policy around the appropriations that was related to the amendment that's here, just how the money is being appropriated from each of the funds is important to understand, I think. Because now we've got substance misuse fund in here as well as the opioid special fund, settlement fund. So, Katie can talk about that.
And we should know about that, and then we can,
Yeah.
as background, put Senator Lyons' amendment.
Okay. Katie McLean, Office of Legislative Counsel, I'll give you very high level. So section 1 is the appropriations of the opioid abatement special fund. I won't go through all of them, but you'll note some of them have this language, subsection B, that is the intent of the General Assembly that whatever's funded in A be an annual appropriation until the special fund doesn't have any money left for expenditure. I flag that because later in the draft, there is language that for next fiscal year, there won't be new proposals coming into the advisory committee. Instead, the only proposals that can come in are for this annual funding as has been identified in statute. So this is the list of appropriations. We have some changes in language being made to previous appropriations. Section 3, you'll see this in the amendment that was prepared. But this is language of additional people for the advisory committee to consult with, the equity advisory committee. We have language that each ongoing funding proposal considered by the advisory committee shall include a sustainability plan from the applicant to ensure consideration of future expenses and available resources apart from the opioid abatement special fund. So the conversation around that is that this is not a permanent source of funding. So what is the plan moving forward? Section 4 is the suspension that I mentioned, that next year the committee is not to accept funding proposals for the fund unless it was previously identified in statute as intended for annual funding, and that is those subsection B's that I indicated to you earlier. Instead, it's reviewing outcomes. The committee is reviewing outcomes of programs previously funded, and assessing the appropriateness of using the opioid abatement special fund as a funding source. And if there's money left over after making those fiscal year 2028 appropriations, the advisory committee shall identify specific areas of focus and shall make funding recommendations with those areas based on needs assessments. This section 5 is asking for quarterly reporting on the use of the special fund from the health department. Section 6 is reversions from a previous appropriations for various reasons. Section 7 is the substance misuse prevention special fund. So these are appropriations from a different special fund. I believe Nolan reviewed those with you. There is language and underlying or permanent statutory language about the special fund that is part of its budget presentation. The health department is to report to the various committees on its specific spending proposal from the special fund in the upcoming fiscal year, including an estimate of the monies that are in the fund. And then we have our effective date. So that's the bill, the committee report. And then would you like me to share the amendment? Okay.
And I do have some copies there. So look at hard copy. There's 2 pages.
Okay. So we have instances of amendment. The first instance of amendment strikes all of section 3 out and then puts it back in. So what the changes are not in this subsection C that you're seeing. That's just taking the language from the committee report. And where you have new language is in subsection E at the bottom of page 2. So changing the header presentation to recommendations, because that's really what this subsection is about. Breaking this into 2 subdivisions. One subdivision is specifically about recommendations from the advisory committee. The second subdivision reflects upon the fact that sometimes the advisory committee and health department's recommendations don't line up. In both cases, this is specifying that the AG's office is consulted when the recommendations are being developed, whether it's just the advisory committee's recommendations or whether it's a separate proposal from the health department. So in this this subdivision 1, annually, I'll skip the first sentence, second sentence, recommendations shall be informed by outcomes and measurements reported by previous grantees and developed in consultation with the Office of the Attorney General. So the advisory committee, and then this new subdivision 2. If the department does not agree with the recommendations of the advisory committee, it may separately submit its own recommendations, which has been its practice to date, developed in consultation with the Office of the Attorney General to the General Assembly. And then we have a second instance of amendment. And in subdivision A1 at the very bottom, it says that the settlement funds must be utilized exclusively for opioid prevention, intervention, treatment, recovery, harm reduction services. And the language being added is and co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders. That language is taken from Appendix E of the AG settlements. And so that language is also being used here in statute, that an authorized use of the money from the special fund is for co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders, co-occurring meaning secondary to an opioid use disorder.
And overall, it ensures that the money that's being taken out of the fund is being appropriately used based on the guidelines for the money from the settlement. And so that we don't put the state in jeopardy by using it inappropriately. I mean, that's how I.
Second question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking about the sustainability aspect of this, and it's making me wonder about, I feel like I should know this, but generally speaking, the trends in opioid use going up, going down, flat, or it's going down.
It is going down,
Okay, that's encouraging.
knocking on wood,
Yeah.
rural rights.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Centerline, more question for Centerline, I think, but I noticed on page 3 above this 2 section that there's existing language where it said the advisory committee shall give priority consideration to services requiring funding on an ongoing basis. But before that, we're asking, how are you gonna fund on your ongoing basis? I guess I was just surprised to see that sentence, because usually we don't want base requests going on like that. We have for 110 then. But am I reading that right? Like the idea at one point was to look at like long-term solutions or something?
I think so. I can't remember when we wrote that.
I think that's probably part of the original language.
Yeah, it was.
But in a sense, you're sort of doing that this year because you're pausing all short-term projects and you're only, as a priority, taking up projects that have been designated for annual funding.
Right.
At the same time, you're right, you're asking proposals that are coming in, what's the long-term plan for your funding?
So, and the advisory committee gives proposals to the services requiring funding on an ongoing basis.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The The advisory committee shall give a priority consideration to services requiring funding on an ongoing basis. It seems a little contradictory. That's a,
So I would read that as, the advisory committee submits 12 proposals. They can't all be funded. But there are some that have been identified in the past as requiring annual funding, and those are the ones that are going to, get top priority when the funding happens versus newer proposals that are one proposals.
because the advisory committee presented to the department and then the department submits. Those are making a different list to the legislature. Is that the right?
They typically, what has happened in the past is if there's not agreement between the advisory committee and the health department, that they will submit separate lists, and that's what happened this year.
And did it happen in the past as well? I
It
think I
has
remember one
happened in the
year.
past, and that's why there's language in there that allows the committee to submit its own list, because there were issues in the past with the department submitting a list that didn't reflect the advisory committee's recommendations.
Right. And that's why you have this added language about making sure the AG is consulted to make sure it's aligned with the setup.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Any questions on this amendment? I'm assuming this is amendment proposed by Sarah Lyons, but over the committee amendment to the bill. So I think we can hear a motion to amend and pass the bill favorably unless the other question.
So the amendment's gonna go with the bill. Okay, so just, it gets the time for further discussion. I like everything about this, the opioid program, whatever else, but I don't see a plan coming to fruition as far as how we're dealing with all these syringes that are being left in the streets, on the lawns and the ballparks. And it's easier for us to continue dumping $850,000 to $1 million each year into saving the lives and preventing HIV. But I don't feel that we are addressing the other end of this problem. And I think it's our responsibility to do just that, rather than to continue dumping $850,000 for a syringe program that originally was supposed to be an exchange program, because that's not happening. But I can assure you that I'm finding these syringes, and if you live in the greater Burlington area, you've tripped over one or two yourself. All I want to see is some type of an effort, a plan or something to say, how can we combat this? And Howard Center picking up in Burlington is great, but it doesn't work for the rest of the state. So just because of that, because I don't see anything, I'm more involved in knowing this. The other portions of it are great. So I'm not happy with the syringe program and dumping constant money into this program.
Just to clarify, the money that's appropriated here is not derived from a specific bill. It's derived from specific, I think that the advisory committee looks at requests for funding. So the funding that's in here is from requests that organizations and individuals have made to reduce opioid addiction, to look at intervention, treatment, recovery. The advisory committee reviewed, I think, 67 different requests for proposals and then narrowed it down. There wasn't one, as far as I know, that did what you would like to have done. So this is not something that our committee, we didn't step on the toes of the advisory committee or the Department of Health in modifying this. We try to be clear and adhere to the recommendations as much as we could, and also looking at the funding source. So what you're asking for is different. It really is. And I think it's important. What you're saying is critically important. It could be a bill that's introduced. It could be a request for proposal. It could be a bill that says whenever the syringe exchange program is put in place, syringes shall be collected in this way. But it's not something that was asked for of the advisory committee when they made recommendations about funding. That is a frustrating thing, and I agree with you.
How many years, Senator Lyons, has this program been in existence. And
Three?
3 years old,
Which one?
the needle exchange program. It's
Oh,
already longer.
Oh, it's been for a long time. It's the Ryan White, started with the Ryan White program to ensure that people don't get, HIV, so they have clean needles, and Gail Zatz is the expert in this area.
And I agree with the aspect of what you're talking about. Well, when I was just the other end of the problem.
So my suggestion, I mean, it's for all of us. Feeling passionate about this, put a bill in. We need to put a bill in or some language in that will modify how the funding is utilized.
And is this 850 existing funds or then a new appropriation, just like carrying it forward from prior fiscal years?
It's new one time,
No,
It is.
no one time.
new one time every year.
This is
It's out of
the,
the opioid fund, so it's.
So I just didn't know if it was appropriated last year and they hadn't spent it. So
So what was it last year and all?
Yeah, we'll look at that. So it was, 850,000 last year. The year before it was 1 million, and the year before that it was 400,000.
And
we,
Vermont, there's the organizations that are doing the needle exchange that ever come back to us with any suggestions about, because this isn't the first time we've heard about needles standing up. Have we ever asked them to come back with suggestions
I
on
think
it,
we've talked about it,
but haven't done anything?
but we haven't put it into statute.
about 20 years. Maybe we should have something along those lines.
Mr. Langlois.
I also just want to flag too that there was, as I mentioned, there's the VDH recommendations and there was the OSAC recommendations. Both recommendations actually recommended not doing it this year, but recommended using, but funding in the future. So they put it into their section called recommendations for future funding, just not for this year,
But the house,
but the house itself, that now we want to put it in this year.
Right.
That's interesting.
I was being sorry.
Oh, it is.
I made a change to the amendment and I was wondering if I could put it up on the screen.
Sure.
I didn't like it when I read it out loud. Is that, do you
Yeah.
mind?
Please.
Okay.
Highway right.
Sorry. Okay. So here's the language. This is now draft 3.1. But it says used exclusively for opioid prevention, intervention, treatment, recovery, harm reduction services, co-occurring mental health conditions, co-occurring substance use disorders. The difference is that opioid now modifies the last two items in the list. And the last version, it felt like it could be any mental health and substance use co-occurring pair.
Yes.
So this makes it as a list where opioid modifies it.
Pages.
Four.
Oh, yeah.
So you're just adding co-occurring before substance use disorder.
Yeah, and I added conditions after mental health.
Oh.
So it's the list now.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good.
It might be out policy, but I'm just wondering why, if they didn't recommend 850,000 this year, why we're doing it.
The house decided to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, so I guess you could ask the Senate Chair why that the
Senate Health
Senate.
and Welfare agreed that it should be in there. There's still a need for the needle exchange program. So we concurred with the House on that.
For what it's worth. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
they recommend taking a year off and then doing it again next year. What's that all about? I'm trying to figure out the reasoning behind that.
But it's the year off is to allow for, because of concerns about the ongoing annual funding. The year off allows for the advisory committee to evaluate the effectiveness of each of the programs that they're funding. And then look at those that need the longer term funding. Those will probably continue, but there are some that could be evaluated as one-time annual events.
Was the House recommendation to make them all wait a year or just this certain project?
No, I'm looking, I think you're asking about the underlying bill.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Just the 850 for the needle exchange program, from what I heard, Or were they talking about the underlying?
No,
There were several initiatives that they said in the past have been funded, they support them. But felt that they want to be funded in the future and skip a year.
Not just this program.
There was a few others as well.
Not all of them.
Not all.
Like, let's stop everything and reevaluate.
They said, here's things that we think were funded last year that should be funded. Again, here's things that are new things we want to be funded. And then here's things that have been funded that we still support. I think you should wait a year and then fund it next year.
Okay.
Those were the kind of the way it broke down.
and to look at the outcomes for those programs that they may or may not fund. So if you have something they've been funding and it's not as effective like it, then they might make a decision not to fund it. There are a lot of requests, just a lot of requests processed for these dollars. And I will say, the advisory committee has done an outstanding job. They've really taken it on and done an effective job in making their decisions about how to spend the money, how to evaluate the proposals that come in, to ask for the proposals, working with the Department of Health. And I know there are sometimes differences there, but it's amazing. It's a lot of work.
Okay. Any other
I
questions?
was just gonna say, couple of years ago, I tried to do some work on a proposal on this problem, which would have basically allowed people to trade in a certain number of used needles for a food cart. And, you know, they could take them to certain locations. They would have the food carts there. You would turn in, and there would be special containers. So you could, when you went to turn it in, you'd get a new needle. You could take that out with you. And then if you put 5 needles in, was the idea, you'd get $20 in food, on the EBT card. It bogged down because of safety concerns for, and liability for sending people out to pick up needles when they might not themselves or something.
Yeah.
But I hear you. It's a horrible problem, unaddressed. And just to personalize a little bit, when I sold my house in the Old North End, somebody bought it and was apparently using needles, and the little girl next door named Carly stepped on one of these needles and then had to be tested for HIV multiple times as she went forward to make sure that she hadn't interacted with it. So, you know, it's one of those problems that seems like it should be susceptible to a solution, but so far hasn't. Right.
And it's not as challenging as the advisory committees. I'm sure they're very good at what they do, they're very professional at what they do. I just want to see something that says how we look at it just in the future, rather than, I don't know what you do at this point, we're so late in the game, rather than $850,000, is that all used to buy syringes? How is that? $850,000 worth of syringes.
I have to go for a meeting. I am a yes on this.
Okay.
I think you also heard from Dale that there's treatment, there is education, there's information that's given out concurrent with having needles available. So it's not just handing out needles. It's how do you dispose of them? How do you bring them back? How do you, and you know, people who are using these needles for injections of drugs aren't, they may not be listening the way you are.
I agree, but in the same breath, we're storing in the hearts, our children.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more.
So this is offered the needle, but the 850,000 didn't get appropriated this year in the House bill.
It did. Yes, it did.
And, well, that was not supported by who? The advisory committee?
The advisory committee wanted to hold off for the year.
And the Department of Health.
And the department, well,
And the House.
I had heard that the Department of Health wanted to do it this year. Wanted to do it for
That's what Mr. Langwell.
In their recommendation, they did not. In their recommendation, and Jessica can correct me, but in their recommendation, they said we support the program and we suggest postponing it a year.
Do you want to say anything?
Sure, Jessica Shapano, Policy Director, Department of Health. So in our evaluation and our recommendation, due to the carry forward from previous years, we had recommended that the syringe service programs did not need an additional appropriation this year. In conversation that has happened between House Human Services and Senate Health and Welfare and the aid service organizations and FSPs, they have indicated and brought evidence that there is a continuing need in addition to the carryover to include the $850,000 appropriation this year as well. So that was what the decision was based on in both the House and the Senate.
Okay, Sarah Watson.
I didn't quite understand what she said, what you just said. Did you change your position in the health department now and believe that they need some funds to make the 150? Is that what? Because I'm probably being dense, but I didn't understand.
Sure, I can clarify. So we, based on the evidence, do believe that there is an additional need this year for the SSPs.
Okay.
Sarah Watson. Yeah.
So. Point Bill, I am hearing you though about this as a problem and this I'm gonna say this out loud and I don't know if this is a good idea. So caveated that way, but the kinds of problems that we're talking about right now are the kinds of things that we talk about a lot in natural resources regarding waste in general. And wondering this out loud, but wonder about the appropriateness of an extended producer responsibility organization for syringes.
For what?
For syringes. That would ultimately pay for the proper disposal of them.
So if there were an RFP to do that, then it might be funded through the advisory committee. Or if we had a bill that would provide for that, we could approve that and then have the funding. Do that. I'm less apt to want to modify this.
I would agree. Well,
Yeah, it's hard.
This idea, even if we were to do an extended producer responsibility organization, or
It's great.
that I think it could be, but it would not be the kind of thing that I would just.
You can't just do it.
I can't just do it. And I don't know that an RFP, I could picture a report on the feasibility of an EPR. But I'm thinking about like, because I don't think we're going to solve the problem right now, but like, how do we set ourselves up to think about this problem differently in the future?
If anything that we would even suggest going forward, I think we should ask the organizations outright that are doing the work, what do you think?
Yeah.
I would start with them, but that's.
Maybe those of us on the committee that feel that way could make a floor amendment instead of messing with these better committees. Bill and amend.
I don't want to mess with central things.
That's what I'm saying, we got
Remember that. Well, I can't in good conscience and faith continue the path we're going on without a plan B and in placing our children, grandchildren looking in harm's way. I just can't.
So you have Northwest Counseling Center in Franklin County. I've got Howard Center and here's Washington County Mental Health. And they're probably each distributing needles. So those are the folks who need to be asked, what are you doing and what could we do more?
Yeah.
So, and I've actually talked with Howard Center about this and it's just, it's really difficult. They have someone who goes out and helps not just educate folks, but helps pick up the needles and bring them in a safe way. If every single organization around the state did that, we'd be adding money to the, appropriation. But you can never guarantee that you're going to find every needle and you can follow every person who has one of those needles. That's the problem.
But I can guarantee you that there's more needles on the ground now throughout Franklin County than there needs to be. Whether I find every one or not, there's still a concern.
Totally
throughout the
agree with you. Totally agree with
county. I
you.
mean, I don't want to play the ball up there.
No, can I just,
Yeah.
check, could I ask a question? How much the carry forward was from last year and what? Maybe of the. Yeah,
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, that carries.
Jessica,
You know,
you-
that's a just.
Okay. Okay, Jessica knows.
Yes.
So far, none of the funds have gone out the door yet
So last year.
from last year. Not that they haven't been needed, but we've had, communication issues. let's
So the
say,
full
some
850.
misunderstandings. In terms of getting the money out the door, and just to know, they are still waiting for FY 25% funds. But not for this program,
Yeah.
for something else.
So no, I'm
So
talking,
there's been difficulty in the money
So
getting
so the
out the
full
door of the
amount, the
program.
full amount is still there, to answer your question, 850,000, if that's accurate.
Getting money out the door. We have language.
You have a report, watch quarterly report.
so can I follow up on that? I was asking about the needle exchange program, which I thought I heard had a carry forward
Yes.
of the whole 850 from last year.
It's not a carry forward. It was characterized as a carry forward as if the funds had not been needed or used.
Still here.
But the programs have been spending other funds in anticipation of these funds coming to reimburse them for the money that they are spending. They're still doing the work. They just have not been reimbursed. The way it works is you spend the money and you get reimbursed. So it's not that there isn't a need. It was not a carry forward. We took great exception to that characterization of it. They have been doing the work. They have been needing the funds. They just have not received the funds.
I think I'm more confused now than before I asked the question.
Right, so they have spent 650,000 or 800 of the 850. We don't know because they don't have a grant agreement in place for where they haven't transferred the funds, so they haven't been able to send an invoice to the department.
Right.
Get reimbursed, yeah.
Yeah, so the grants some of them have been recently updated, and we're hoping that within a very short period of time, those funds will flow. Yes,
You're expecting, or at least the agencies that are doing the work expect to spend full 850. That's just good.
yes, they are possibly going to extend the period within which they can spend it beyond June 30th because the funds have arrived so late.
They would spend the full 850 if they were getting reimbursed.
Yes, absolutely. And if I can also add, I have a little list of what the SSPs also do, if you would like to hear that. In
Related
addition-
to syringes.
Yes, so the syringe service programs provide clean syringes, but they also provide sharps containers and disposal of the syringes that they receive. They provide naloxone. I think they said something to the effect of 10,000 doses of naloxone have been given out over the past year. Overdose response trainings, drug checking services, fentanyl and xylazine test strips, wound care kits, resource navigation and education, and they provide connection to treatment, which is sort of a summary of the work that they do. So it's not just merely handing out syringes. They have played a very significant role in overdose preventions in the state.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do you guys want to talk more about syringes or? Unless there's got an amendment to this amendment or amendment to the bill. I would entertain a motion to move the bill as amended.
So
So moved. That's with the amendment that.
Yeah.
For McLean.
the
Made those update on page.
Committee,
Yeah.
Senator Brennan. Yes. Senator Lyons,
yes.
Senator Norris,
No,
Senator Watson,
Yes.
Senator Weston,
Yes.
Senator Firstly.
Yes. Center lines want to report.
Okay, sure. Unless
That's
Senator
good.
Norris wants to.
Come on.
Oh, you can't.
You can't do it. You kept your head down. Okay,
It's just that one item.
but so, you know.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Let me just say, we're all frustrated by that one light,
Mhm.
but to say that until we find a really good way of getting them off the street. But I mean, think of the different ways you could do it. You could limit the place where they're accessed. And you could say you can't take it beyond this radius. I mean, there are things you can do like that would require some enforcement.
Your safe injection site, which has changed its name now, whatever.
That would do
There's
it.
no control.
They don't have
on
one.
a building for.
If you had an OPC, then you'd have all of these services embedded within the OPC. And it would be held within a very narrow radius. Public safety would be alert to it. And you'd have all the things you need right there.
And we don't, we're continuing, we still.
We're still-
We don't, still continue, don't.
It's tough.
It's still gonna end up underground.
How about when if you get 10, a package of, I don't even know if they come in 10,
Uh-huh.
you don't get another 10 until you bring 10 expended ones back.
I would like that. Figure out how to do that. We'll do it.
Well, you don't get them unless you bring it back. Yeah,
How
I
do
mean,
you
I know
know?
it's, maybe give them a solid container or something.
Okay, and how do
I
you
don't-
know that the person who came in didn't go to the other site? I mean,
Well,
I mean, I think that was what the idea was.
you mean collect
yeah,
a bunch of.
there might be another place to pick up needles.
But we know it's not 10 more on the ground, so bring 10 into the exchange equipment.
No, but he's, okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
We're frustrated, yeah, we. we all-
I get you. I understand. I'm with you. So I think talking with Howard Center, Northeast Counseling, Washington County Mental Health and others, and maybe we put a little amendment on something that has those people
Attempt to address.
provide a suggestion.
I think if you require an exchange, then people will not have one to exchange,
They want to.
and we'll just they'll use 30 days and then you're back at the.
You know, I'll tell you a little story. I know it's getting late, but we were in Portland, Maine, about 3 weeks ago. My grandson, little blonde-haired, tow-headed kid, and they're educating him in school to watch out for stuff. But so every 5 minutes, orange cap, and you know, to the point. No, I didn't see a syringe, but I saw a lot of orange caps, and he knows what they are. And it got so bad that my daughter had to tell him, "Daddy, that's enough. And don't look down on the ground anymore." You know, they were all over the place.
And he was, the grant there, I'd like to see something online where that data could be collected for these groups. I'd to say, okay, how many needles, orange caps did you find while you were out? Can you just give us some idea what's happening?
Yeah, so there's, like in my neighborhood, we tallied what beer cans we find, but I don't know.
What do I, number one?
No, otherwise it's dropped out.
I mean,
Okay.
just a T.
Okay.
EPR.
EPR maybe.
EPR.
Okay, well.